Alix Jules. Alix Jules, one of our founding members. One of our favorite sons here in the atheist world in Texas. He was our executive director for a number of years, very active in the community. He's the other guy, as he calls himself, on Dogma Debate. Everybody listen to David Smalley? Okay, Dogma Debate. Okay, well, you'll hear Alix on that as well. He blogs at Patheos, I believe you're the graffiti wall, right? Without further ado, and by the way, when I asked Alix to do this, we were trying to figure out, how to talk about race. And as I envisioned today, in my mind's eyes, I looked around the room, I realized how white we are. And so I invited Alix to make you feel a little bit uncomfortable today. So push yourself a little bit, and ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Alix Jules.
Yeah, I'm going to make you a little uncomfortable. You don't have to be white anymore.
I'm already uncomfortable.
Good. It was when Al called me and said, "Hey, I want to have this conversation." The first thing that I started thinking about is, this is going to be one of those HR diversity talks that we used to make fun of in the 80s. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So I want to try and keep this a little interactive with a lot of context. So, first disclaimer. Y'all can read, right? But get over it. And that's the reality. You will get over it. I'm really hoping that when you walk away, you're going to be uncomfortable. You take a few bits and nuggets away, and you have a little bit of a plan to make the world a little bit of a better place. All right, so one of the things that you learn in public speaking is always start off with a joke. Like, okay. Anyone got a joke? Come on, I was struggling.
I already did.
Yeah, but it wasn't funny. You got one?
This one was from Lena. She says, why do bears not wear socks?
Why do bears not wear socks? Why?
They have bare feet.
They have bare feet. That's cute. Anyone got any more colorful jokes? We have one in the back.
What do you call a psychic midget that just escaped from jail?
Ooh, what do you call them?
A small, medium, at large.
Bad. So I did a poll online, and I started talking to a couple of friends. I said, hey, we walk in and we deal with all kinds of off humor all the time. And growing up Black in America, you kind of grow with a thick skin. And I said, we're in corporate America. What are some of the jokes that, as a Black person, you walk in on and you hear or you've heard just at the water cooler or whatever? And so I said, okay, just toss them over. And this is what I got back. Now, understand that two of them are from high-level Black executives in corporate America. This is what they walk into. How do you get the little Black kids to stop jumping on the bed? Put Velcro on the ceiling. How do you get them down? It's like, ooh, that's not funny. How about this one? I'll repeat this one. 70% of Black men like sex in the shower. The other 22% have been prison. And this is what people are comfortable saying in front of us. I'm not going to excuse it, but that's kind of what casual racism is. It's very passive, it's very overt. Here's another one. Why does Beyonce sing to the left, and when I saw this, I actually did laugh. Because black people have no rights. But on my phone. Okay. All right, so actually, what I really legitimately want to cover here? Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the dynamics of language and power. What is casual racism? Where does offense actually lie? Because a lot of times we have this conversation, you're just easily offended. Where is it founded? Where is it rooted? And how is it coded in identity politics in 2016? And lastly, what do you do about it? Okay, so reality is, chances are, you're probably a little racist. It's kind of hard to not be in America. These are what the numbers actually look like. This is from a 2012 poll that was conducted by AP. It was very, very controversial then. When we've gone back and looked at it, the numbers are actually trending upward, not downward. So 51% of Americans have an explicit anti-black attitude. Are blacks more criminal? Are blacks more lazy? Etc. If you remember a couple of, I think it was almost 6 months ago, there was a poll that was done with a particular portion of Donald Trump supporters regarding slavery. I know I can't get too political, but about 20% of them said, we would be okay with that. Okay? So 51% of Americans across the board have anti-black sentiment. Now, this particular AP poll didn't just address implicit bias, which a lot of times we just tend to say, okay, it's all implicit, it's passive stuff. No, this is the aggressive anti-black sentiment, 51%. And that was what was kind of interesting about this poll, because it did talk about what's actually at the surface and what is motivating people. When you look at just the implicit bias number, you're getting closer to 56%, and yes, that's the country we live in. All right, so when we talk about passively versus very explicit or active racism, a lot of times, when I call a racist, a lot of times their immediate visceral response is, I'm not racist. I've even had arguments with Klanmen that have said, I'm not racist. It's like, how are you defining racism? Also, the area of brotherhood tends to be, we're proud of racism and we're okay with that. Okay. But racism has changed. We're not being lynched in the streets anymore. We've got legal protections against overtly racist acts, etc. But it's still very much there. So let's talk about passively not know. Does everyone know what this is? Okay, so Ellen got into a little bit of trouble because she posted this picture of Usain Bolt, where she photoshopped herself on his back. And a lot of people were like, oh, that's really cool. Except for many African Americans, this is the imagery right here that's going to invoke. Now, a lot of white people wouldn't know that imagery, wouldn't be familiar with that imagery. And this is one of many. This is the one I was comfortable showing. But black bodies have, for several hundred years in America, and that's the history, have been used as a mode of transport. So we had this massive outcry with black people, like, you know what, that's a little racist. And if you listen to what I said, that's a little racist. Yeah, it's a little racist. But it's not super racist. So Can't we just be okay with this? I mean, she's not racist, is she? Just because she did something that is kind of sort of racist. And we get into splitting hairs at that point, right? Because you can actively support racism without truly being an overt or conscious racist. Okay. So as racism changes, so there's a time where as time changes and society progresses, doesn't this idea of racism, I mean, we all have the same opportunities, do we not? Okay. And isn't everything getting better? Lil Wayne, a couple of days ago, the rapper Lil Wayne, said something that initially when I read the story, I was like, oh, he didn't say that. And I actually went back and looked at the video. I was like, no, that's actually not what he said. But what the press was reporting is Lil Wayne says that racism doesn't exist, basically because of millennials. Millennials are less racist. Well, it turns out that would be factually incorrect. It turns out that millennials have the same anti-black sentiments, racist sentiments, as Gen Xers and baby boomers. Is it possible that the next generation is going to be less racist? Probably. But when we measure the numbers, it's not even double digits yet. We're talking about anywhere between 1% and 4%. I'll take any percent that I can get, but no, it's not disappearing. President Obama actually said, I think this was last year, he was doing a podcast, and this is probably the best example or explanation of where we are with racism in America, right? We're not cured. And it's not just a matter of not being polite and saying nigger in public. That's not the measure of whether racism still exists. Societies don't overnight completely erase everything that happened, I'll correct them, 300 to 400 years prior. That's just true. And when we take a look at structural racism and a lot of the systems that we have not dismantled, if you take a very objective look at it, we're producing more racist than not. It's just the way that it is. So what is this term, casual racism? Well, it's racism. But it refers to, and I'll give you the textbook definition, conduct involving propagating negative stereotypes or prejudices about people on the basis of race, color, or ethnicity. They include the jokes, the offhanded remarks, comments, and exclusion of people from social situations on the basis of race. If you are in management or in HR, if you take a diversity class, one of the first things that they will tell you is never use the following term. They probably don't fit in here culturally. What does that actually mean? Person's educated, they've been screened, they're a perfect fit. But when we say culturally, what are you implying? So one of the things that we see in academia and also in corporate America is trying to dismantle some of those very subtle digs that really wind up hurting or excluding people. I want to give you another example.
改变只需一颗俏笔洗衣溶珠。俏笔全国招生热线400-800-5086。
Okay, so that is actually still playing. There was a lot of backlash when this came out. It is a Chinese ad for a particular detergent, and the online community just blew up and said, "Oh, I mean that is a little racist." That's a lot racist. But as you can see, there was no hanging, no lynching, dropping the N-words. I mean, nothing that we typically define as. But the Klan didn't produce that. No, it's significantly more subtle. It is sticky. It is here. It's very violent. Okay, so let's talk about some of these examples. I've heard this so many times. Okay, so you're so pretty for a black girl. Okay, you sound so educated, or you're so articulate. Wow, you don't sound black. What exactly does that mean? Also undercutting or dismissing achievement based on race. Oh, we all know how he got there. Affirmative action. Right? These are all the back end conversations that happen, and we know that they exist. But how do we challenge them? How do we fix these things? Of course you can dunk your blood. And in this very political year, or political season, because it's been probably about 2 years, where we've seen an increase in the level of conversation about dismissing challenging authority by promoting another kind of authority. Can't you just take a joke? Stop being so sensitive. Here comes the PC police. Okay, give you a couple of examples. Some of them very, very recent, not just the Ellen thing. So this one was actually, it's about 2 years old, but it's still one of my favorites. Going to Africa, hope I don't get A's, I'm keeping on white. Tons of backlash. Bo Burnham, the comedian, actually did a song, and he got a lot of backlash on it because he happens to drop, what's not going to happen to me is I'm not going to get A's like Asian man. Okay. Very recently, right here, a couple of students decided that they were going to put masks on, and they said, no, it's not blackface. I finally get to be a nigger, but it's not blackface. Okay. And they were released from school, right? They were released from school. All right, so here goes another one right here. I'm not going to repeat that one. You can read that one, and then there was Amy Schumer. Now, the Amy Schumer one was also very, very passive because it's talking about stereotypes. I don't know have anyone kept up with this one, because she got a lot of heat over this, right? So, she happened to be talking about a conversation with Lena Dunham, where Lena talked about not being wanted by a particular black athlete, who just was not interested in her, and she found this very odd because, of course, black men are interested in white women all the time. And when she happened to talk about harassing, how would you know statistically who is hollering at you in the street more? Paul. Okay, so of course black men, although statistically that's not the case. Statistically, who's more, if we want to talk statistics, who's more likely to get prosecuted for something like rape and get 3 to 6 months? No, you don't need to be a member of the Klan to be racist. It exists, and it perpetuates a social hierarchy that is America. Yet we've evolved to a point where challenging these authorities makes everyone uncomfortable, and everyone begins to take things very personally. I can say that you did something racist, and you're immediately going to internalize, you just called me racist, how dare you? oh no, I said what you did was racist or what you said was racist, but you heard I'm calling you racist. Well, I'm here to tell you that, yeah, you're probably racist too. But it's kind of hard to escape the fact you grew up in America. You really can't get away from it. But aren't you just being sensitive? Free speech, free speech. Okay. And it's your offense and that's your responsibility. Grow up. I can say what I want to say. And that's absolutely true. And that's one of the problems that will continue to perpetuate exactly this kind of moral behavior. Your ability to say whatever you want, and no one's regulating it. And when we try to, by applying social pressures and saying, we don't want this as society, the response is, I get to say whatever I want. We have a particular candidate who is at the height of a political party specifically because he gets to say what he wants, and nothing more. Nothing of substance, he just says what he wants, says what he feels. Okay. So let's talk about what political correctness is. It's usually used as pejorative, and that's what it's become. Commonly abbreviated PC, used to describe language policies or measures that are intended to not offend, disadvantage any particular group of people in society. Okay. Totally get that. So let's do an is versus are. What it really is, when used by free speech activists or anti-PC people, is one. And I want you to remember these. Power conservation. Because what using the term PC really is about maintaining power. I get to maintain my defined status quo. You don't get to challenge it. Versus what PC was intended to do, which is power counterbalance, distribution of equality. Your words should equate to my words. We should be able to have a very simple conversation, or we should be able to moderate, because society has a choice. That's really contentious, and that's very, very hard, because you get into the conversation or the argument of thought policing. That's what we have to decide. What ideas are good versus what ideas aren't. Okay. And since we're talking about PC, I want to talk a little bit about PC Nirvana. It's a safe space. Now, the idea of this is always controversial, because even I, growing up in the 80s and 90s, this idea of a safe space was very foreign to me. Like, what is this safe space? And if you listen to the way that it's characterized in media, it is a place where people go and they're able to hide from ideas that are scary. Ooh, scary. Okay, so in the 60s and 70s, the idea of the safe space was created predominantly by the feminist movement. Actually, the women's liberation movement actually started codifying what the term meant, which was, can we provide an area where minorities at the time, academic minorities, women, would be able to have a conversation with themselves and with their male counterparts without being attacked. That's all it really was. So I just want you to think of something. Let's see. Let me see. Let me pick. Let's see Jamie, if you don't mind. Let's use this as an example. All of the rest of you, we're in the university setting. All of the rest of you are Christian. Jamie's the sole atheist. Good. Okay, she's a sole atheist. And you're having an argument or a discussion on literature or the impact of religion. What is the likelihood that in a potentially contentious argument or debate about religion, Jamie's going to pipe up with the 70 or so of you in the back, with what we know about groupthink, what's the likelihood that she's going to pipe up and share that, hey, guess what? I disagree. Okay, now let's say that it's a campus 500 miles away from home, okay? And she's the only one, all right? Let's make this number of 2. Now there are 2 people, let's say Yaz, Yaz and Jamie are the only atheists. Then they say, hey, it'd be nice if we could have a conversation outside of our bedrooms or in the back where we just whisper, right? And there might be some ideas that other people might be able to learn from. Oh, okay. Where do you think we'd be able to do that? Well, you're not going to be able to do it in class. So what about within this 24-hour cycle where everything else is about everyone else, we take 2 minutes, we're not talking about days, we're not talking about class, we take 2 minutes to address an atheist voice and expose people to those ideas. That's what a safe space is in academia. Now, I will say, like anything else, there are extremes, and there are certain things that, no, I do not understand. But I'm not on the campus, I don't understand the context, and I won't immediately dismiss it because I just gave you an example that I think many of you would be like, I can see that. Let's say in the LGBT community, a place to come out. And it starts to get less funny. Okay. So since we're talking about terms, I love this meme actually. I absolutely love this meme. Uncomfortable terms. I don't like using the term privilege because everyone takes things so personally. When we talk about privilege, we're talking about what you inherit and what you haven't necessarily earned. And when we talk about privilege, it tends to be on an economic base. So when someone says, I'm underprivileged, you immediately say, okay, or this person's underprivileged, then you can immediately say, okay, so that's a financial thing. I get that. Someone that's overprivileged, like, okay, bridge. All right, got that. But the term of a normative privilege or racially defined privilege, it's like, well, I didn't ask for that. No, but you inherited and you get it, and it just happens to be the place that you're in. I didn't ask for mine, which kind of puts me at a disadvantage. You didn't ask for yours, but it just exists. So acknowledging that goes a long way. And again, I don't like the term, but I listen to Christians, as an atheist, I listen to Christians, and when they say the term blessed, I immediately get it. Oh, that's exactly what it is. So if you can relate to that, you can understand what privilege is. Black people can't be racist. That's something I was fight about all the time. Because you have the textbook definition of what is racism. Racism is bigotry, prejudice, etc. You don't like someone because of race, skin color, etc. And if you keep that definition, absolutely, anyone can be racist. However, they can, because of many of the social, not just social justice conversations, but specifically social sciences, and we're talking about the systems that are in place that keep us acting and behaving a certain way. When we start talking about what racism is and what race is, there was a shift in the 70s, or asked from the 70s. Actually, it was a Harvard professor that proposed that we use this term as an alternate term, which is power plus privilege. Now, of course, that immediately puts most white people at a disadvantage because you have power and privilege, and everyone else doesn't in America. The term social justice warrior. I've spoken about this before. It's something that I would think as a humanist, you want to absolutely say that's a badge. But again, it's become a pejorative because anyone interested in social justice is maintaining the status quo and everything is fine racism doesn't exist, sexism doesn't exist, misogyny doesn't exist. All these don't exist, and I'm going to make America great again. Another term that I also don't like using because people immediately react to it. Because when you see the word or hear the word white supremacy, you think David Duke or another politician. But that's what people usually relate to when we talk about white supremacy. Again, when we start addressing the social dynamics, racial dynamics, when academia talks about white supremacy, it is a system that stratifies people based on race. And America was really very much founded on the idea of white supremacy. We see this change, this dynamic happen even when we start looking at class systems, right? Because if I am lower middle class or poor and white, and I need to blame someone, or I need to go after someone, at least I'm not black. At least I'm not black. So you have this. And this was an idea that really started in about the 17th century. I don't want to say it was used to pacify and quell, but it's actually one of the reasons America has been as civil as it's been. With what we've seen, you would expect, and the level of diversity that we do have, you would expect all-out wars, because that's what we see everywhere else. That is a little bit less diverse. America is extraordinarily diverse when talking about us compared to the rest of the world. We should be at war all the time, but we're not. That's not good. And then a term that gets thrown around all the time, cultural appropriation. Cultural appropriation. What is this idea of cultural appropriation? Isn't the idea of culture to evolve and change and social mixing, isn't that a good thing? Isn't that great? Isn't that what we would want to happen? Well, yes. Idealistically, yes, absolutely. But for African Americans in particular, it's very unique because their cultural identity didn't exist. It was taken away from them. So they would have to redefine it with terms such as black is beautiful. Now, why do you need black is beautiful? Well, because you've been told you're ugly your entire life. And that's the narrative that continues to get drummed across all of American media. You're a thug, you're this, you're that. That's all the realities. So you need things that are going to reinforce your own self-esteem or your own identity. So once you have enough power to say, no, this is who I am, and then you have what you've been demonized for appropriated, it's going to elicit a very visceral reaction. We saw it in the 70s with Bo Derek when she decided to have her micro braids. We call those cornrows. Black girls have been told that they're ugly their entire lives because of their cornrows. When in actuality, this is a little bit of a tangent, when in actuality, cornrows were used on the plantation because white slave masters did not like the offensiveness of black hair. It was offensive. So they wanted something that was more kept if they were going to walk into the house. And so it was cornrows. So now we go from an image of shame to trying to adopt it and re-adopt it as an image of beauty. And then all of a sudden it's on Bo Derek and America is saying, look what we invented. That's where you're going to get a little bit of friction. Same thing with these little buttons. Now, those are Bantu knots. And they're called Bantu knots because African women have worn it for years. Same thing with some of the other imagery that has come to symbolize what it is to be African American. All right. I'm almost done, so I want to get to questions. Words matter. This is, I actually got this off of an atheist site because we have a very loud contingent in the atheist and secular online community that is anti-SJW, anti-PC, and I'll go as far as say anti-humanist. And I don't know if this is the majority, but there sure are a lot of them. In fact, I could probably pick one or two of the largest atheist YouTubers out there, and we can go through video after video after video of them using exactly this. And I'm talking about not the sets and the arts, I'm talking about the 500,000, close to 1 million viewers or subscriber type YouTubers. And this is what is driving a lot of their subscribers. They want to hear this, okay? So these are some of the words that sometimes get thrown out very easily by the SJW types, but for a reason. Victim blaming, check your privilege, whitewashing, etc. All those terms actually they are defensive. They're kind of a reflexive action to an attack. And so, of course, instead of accepting that, we dismiss it. Okay. Pop quiz. I want to do a real quick internal bias check. Pick the other picture out of Thug. For the American narrative, it's that way. All right, so I've painted a lot. What do you do about it? Well, the best that you can hope is that when you leave here and you actively check your racist media, because we all have them, your biased media, what do? Best is, I'm going to try and be a little bit less racist today. Don't unfriend your racist friends. I can't reach them, they don't know me. They will not have this conversation. You did. If you want to actively try and dismantle this, you're not going to be able to do it alone. You are not going to be able to change the world. Not by yourself. But you can do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, every single day. The second one, don't let the jokes, the comments, go unchallenged. Denial or silence is acceptance. Understand that racism changes, and it does change you. Number 4 is something that I grapple with all the time, which is fighting fire with fire. Because it does require stooping to a level that I don't like stooping to, but sometimes when you have a child or childlike behavior, you have to wait for a child to bite the other child and say, ow, that hurt. Ow, that hurt. Okay, you both get it, right? It hurts, don't do it. Sometimes that's what has to happen. Use that sparingly. And understand that you can't change the world, but you don't have to. Okay, so questions. Let's get to questions.
So as somebody who's come to you many times and asked, I don't want to sound racist, but, right? And as a white person, I feel like a lot of us feel the need to preface what we say when we're curious about things. And you know how curious I am to know, like, how different social structures work and things. And my daughter is kind of getting to the age where now she's going to public school. She's being exposed to different races of people on a daily basis. she asked me today, what is racism? Because she asked, what is church about today? I said, well, our friend Alix is going to talk about racism. And she says, what's that? I said, well, some people believe that the color of your skin is a reason not to like you. And she said, well, that's silly. And how do we go about encouraging our kids to be curious and question without like the fear of being racist, keeping us from asking questions and being open and honest and discussing things like
Ask the question. That's what I always tell people. Ask the question. One of the things that I find myself in constant contention with people, especially those that are seeking equality, is they'll immediately say something like, "It's not my job to educate racist or educate the oppressed or educate whatever." And I said, well, that's kind of inefficient because now you're putting it back on them. They actually reached out to you or stopped right then and there and had a question. And if you don't have at least a canned answer on, these are the resources, boom, 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 give me an email. If you're not going to get buy-in, then you're kind of contributing to the problem. Because just look at the demographics. African Americans, 13%. I said 13.3%. That's like 1 in 10. There are more atheists, or nuns, excuse me, or there are more nuns out there than there are black people in the United States. So no, you can't do it alone, and you need allies.
So I don't have a question, but I want to make a comment. I do agree we're all just a little bit racist, like a song I've heard recently. So I'm going to be open about something from my past. I think it might help other people too, to be open about yourself. So I'm from Yemen, and my family of Arab origins. My parents are pretty racist. They're especially very racist towards Indians, not Native Americans, but Indian people. So as a kid, my parents, authority figures, when you hear them over and over again saying these kinds of things, you start, believing them and carrying these into your adult life. And so I had, terrible, reflexive reactions, and, I do admit to that, or when people make the assumption I'm Indian, it used to bother me, no, I'm not Indian, I'm Arab, there's a difference. So, I just wanted to admit to that, and, hopefully others can open up about things like that.
Well, yeah, tribalism, nativism, jingoism, that's all very, very human. I don't know if you can look up the blue-eye, brown-eye experiment. And this is an experiment where children, friends, classmates, etc., little children, I think they were kindergarten, first grade, were told right before recess, the blue-eyed children are better, smarter, etc., and brown-eyed children weren't. This was just a bunch of homogenous children, just nothing extraordinary about them. And it was a social experiment, and it was recorded, and the difference is that what happened during recess alone was absolutely terrifying. They immediately stratified, they became cliques, they started treating people that just the night before they would be having dinner with as if they were anything else but friends. And it obviously takes a while for that to wear off, and how do you address that, etc.
We have a kid here.
Oh, yep.
Ariana's daddy.
What's up, baby girl?
She needs to go to the hospital.
I got 5 of those. I know what it's like. Okay. So yes, it's very human, and so we have to accept that. And I want want to address it because it's important. Because we always talk about this idea that color doesn't matter, I don't see color. And that's wonderfully idealistic. It's also very false because we absolutely do see color. Even those that say I have no bias will express implicit bias. So as soon as you say I don't see color, you're dismissing the experiences that other people are having. That's one. And that's kind of what's, it's very racist to actually say that. And then secondly, what planet are you on? Because everything else out there is drawn up, decided, or influenced by color, especially in America. So don't tell me that you don't see color. And if you do, you're special. And you're a very special snowflake, and welcome to the world. Okay, next.
Yeah, you mentioned YouTube before. I have a personal observation that people are very, I don't want to use the term brave, but overt in their racism, a lot of times in YouTube comments in particular.
Never read the comments.
Yeah.
Never read the comment.
Never read the comment.
I'm curious about has there been any studying done on social media and what allowed, my guess on that is on YouTube, you're not actually talking to your friends, so people are braver and they say things that are really outrageous. And what do we know about social media and the way it allows us to express ourselves and sometimes bring out some of these racist?
Yeah, okay, so there was a Harvard study, there are several ongoing studies, but the Harvard study was, I want to say it was 2012, that addressed how brazen people are and whether they're actually showing more of their true color versus what they've hidden. And the reality is people are much braver and much more honest online because there's no face-to-face interaction. There's no immediate feedback. So if you're in a room and you've got 20 people there and you say something that's overtly racist, sexist, misogynist, blah, 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 etc., all of the isms or the likelihood of you getting a social cue that's unacceptable is significantly higher than someone saying something on YouTube, trying to correct that, and even if they do, you get to walk away. So you never deal with the social ramifications and such, and you get to be as anonymous as you want to be. So there's no real impact. You say something like that, in real media where your name is recorded, etc. If you're a police officer that has a white supremacist tattoo, as we saw in Philadelphia, as soon as that gets picked up, boy, you're under investigation. Versus having those same kinds of ideologies, etc., online and expressing them online. So there's a very big difference in the way people act online versus in real life. Yes. Wrap up. Okay, we got kids.
Hungry kids.
Hungry kids. All right. Well, yes.
Do you want to tell them about Ruby Bridges next week?
Aren't those tickets sold out? I think those tickets.
No, I just posted a link on your page.
Okay. Okay, so Ruby Bridges is going to be what school? Which school is it?
The event is on Alix's Facebook page.
All right.
It's in Addison.
Yeah, so Ruby Bridges, if you know the story, first child to actually go out there, versus the Board of Education, etc. She's going to be in town and she's doing a presentation in Addison. I don't remember the name of the school that she's in, but she's 60 or 63. Yeah.
Like, I saw that.
That's how recent all of this is. But for me on Facebook, I only have a few spots left, or find me on my public page and I'll post that information there. Thank you very much for having me.